Coming up, a surprise visitor for Alabama and a tough choice for Tide fans. It's all on the way next, right here on AT&T SEC Country Live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to AT&T's SEC Country Live. We are absolutely loaded today. That is Mike Johnson. My name is Brandon Adams. It's Zach Alba, Vernie. About 40 minutes from right now, we'll preview the Florida-Texas A&M game with him. About 20 minutes from right now, we'll also talk about another scandal potentially brewing at Auburn. In between now and then, a lot of looks at a lot of really interesting games, some of which that have gotten more interesting over the last couple of hours.
Today is one of those shows where you just feel like one show's not enough for all the topics we're going to be talking about. A ton of good games on the slate this weekend, a ton of topics outside of football to be talking about as well.
It's all brought to you by AT&T. AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Let's dive in right here with item number one on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. There is a report out there, and it's been confirmed now a few times, I guess, that Clemson coach Dabo Swinney, because his team plays tomorrow night against Syracuse, will be in attendance for Saturday's game against Arkansas for Alabama, as Alabama honors its 1992 national champions, a team that Dabo Swinney played on. Here's what Aaron Suttle said on Twitter about this, that Clemson plays Friday, opening up the opportunity for Dabo to be there. He's scheduled to be at Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday night. Now, you want to talk about a madhouse scene. This is a circus sideshow, the likes of which I cannot imagine. The guy that did play at Alabama, maybe one day the replacement for Nick Saban in Alabama, but a guy that also beat Alabama in last year's national championship game and the opponent in the last two national championship games, maybe a third rematch coming up this year. What do you make of Swinney being in Tuscaloosa?
This is huge news for Alabama fans. I mean, everybody I've talked to today has been abuzz about the news that Dabo is going to be in the stadium Saturday. And Alabama fans, for the most part, are extremely plugged in. They know the news. They can see what's on the headlines. They know the narrative about the football team, about the future of Alabama football. So for me, this is a no-brainer. People are going to be extremely excited when Dabo walks through those doors. And just dating back to last year in Tampa, when I went down there to watch the national championship game, fans understand. Fans have such a respect for what Dabo has done at Clemson that I don't think there's going to be anybody that's wishy-washy about it. Everybody's going to be probably chanting the guy's name as he walks through the door.
Okay, so I believe that you're more likely right than not. You know more about Alabama than I do because you played there and you went to school there. But you used a phrase that I don't agree with. You said no-brainer. And for me, this is not a no-brainer. And this is not me being snarky or snide or anything like that. I think some Alabama fans will actually agree with me on this. That while he may one day be your coach, and certainly he is a part of your past, having played on the 1992 team, right now he's on your present, and he's a nemesis in your present. He took food off your table last year. He beat you in the national championship game, and he may be your opponent again this year. I mean, this is a little bit like Urban Meyer coming into Bryant-Denny Stadium, with the exception of the fact that Meyer didn't play at Alabama. So more likely to get cheers than not? Probably. Would I say no-brainer that he'll be universally cheered? For me, it is not a no-brainer.
Well, I say no-brainer because I think for the most part, Alabama fans are secure with what they have at the helm right now. I think if there was a lot more question marks about what Nick Saban was as a head coach, if he was falling off, if Alabama wasn't considered the number one or the number two team in the country, depending on who you ask, then there might be some ruffles of some people that aren't that excited to see Dabo walking through the doors. But the fact is that Alabama fans are extremely secure with what's going on in Tuscaloosa right now. Number one team in the country, coming off back-to-back national title game appearances. Yes, Dabo was the guy to go in there and beat Alabama, but he's an Alabama native. He's a Bama guy. He's a member of the A Club, and I know a lot of people are going to be happy to have him back in the stadium.
So many good comments rolling in on this. Curtis Crowe says, next coach at Alabama, meaning Dabo Swinney. Elder R.O. Rose says, not sure about the chanting. In other words, maybe some cheers, maybe not some chants. Michael Collins says Saban's not going anywhere. Bruce Hancock, who has the Alabama logo in his Facebook profile, says class act on Dabo's part. Drake Warden says Jeremy Pruitt's going to be the next head coach of Alabama, from Fort Payne PE teacher to Alabama defensive coordinator to head coach. On and on we can go here. Jeremy Pettis says Saban has 6 to 8 years left in him. Dabo has an 8-year contract. It's perfect timing. Tyler Ferguson says Dabo ain't never going to leave Clemson. I mean, why would he? He's built a great empire at Clemson. Donnie Johnston says Daddy paying a visit. In other words, Donnie, I don't believe, is an Alabama fan, referencing that Dabo Swinney is coming back to check on his possession, which is Alabama football right now.
And that might be the case for some fans looking at it that way. And it's like I said, I think most Bama fans are secure in the way they feel about their football team right now. That's what really opens the door for me, for a lot of people to cheer for Dabo. From everybody I've talked to today, I've talked to about 20 other Alabama fans and former players there will be a standing ovation when Dabo walks through those doors. And it's more about, first of all, what that team represents. They're going to be celebrating the national championship team in 1992. Gene Stallings got that ovation last week in Texas A&M, celebrating one of his teams, and when we back at it this weekend in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So I think it's more about what the atmosphere will be like this weekend, but Dabo is a part of that. And the fact that he has made time to kind of leave his program to make his way back to Bryant-Denny Stadium, I think a lot of people appreciate that.
Terry Crews, who's a Georgia fan, says, would it not be like Muschamp, meaning Will Muschamp, was coming back to watch a Georgia game with the possibility of playing the Dogs later on in the year? That's a good question. I'm trying to strain my memory here.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't remember this anyway because you're obviously paying attention to the whole league, but I can't remember Muschamp coming back to Georgia since he became Florida head coach. Obviously South Carolina coach now, Auburn defensive coordinator in between. I can't think of a time when he's been back to Athens as a fan, as an alumnus. I can't think of Muschamp having done that, which I think kind of reinforces the fact that this feels a little weird for Dabo.
Well, like I said, I think it's the scenario surrounding it. This is a Dabo that lost one national championship game to Alabama, Nick Saban, and won one. And right now they're 500. And not only that, but as much as Georgia has done a lot of great things this year, I don't know that they're as secure maybe as Alabama fans are with Nick Saban at the helm.
That's a good point. It's a shorter tenure for Kirby Smart's success. And also, just to be totally honest here, Will Muschamp didn't play on teams at Georgia good enough to get remembered and be brought back.
It's a lot different of a
completely
scenario.
Honest here.
It's a lot different of a scenario, and I think that there's going to be open arms for Dabo.
Can I see Aaron Suttle's tweet one more time? Because there's one phrase in this tweet that I kind of want to point out here. He says, Clemson plays Friday night. Alabama's recognized the national championship team. Dabo's scheduled to be in Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday night. And some people have kind of pointed this out that this is like a scheduling fluke. Oh, hey, this is lucky. Because Clemson played on Friday, Alabama was available to do this on Saturday. But you could have honored the 1992 national champions on any Saturday you want. You almost wonder, and Alabama would obviously not speak about this publicly, you almost wonder, did they schedule this so Dabo could be there?
100%. There is no doubt in my mind that's exactly what went into the schedule. And it probably started with maybe Greg Byrne, the AD, probably shot a call over to Dabo Swinney, or maybe even Nick Saban, and said, listen, we'd really love you to be a part of this. Is there at any time, is there any one game that you feel like you can make it to Bryant-Denny Stadium on a Saturday? And I guarantee you this was the answer he got. And some of the fans have mentioned it, and I've had a chance to meet Dabo Swinney and interact with Dabo Swinney. Great guy, just like he seems on camera, and I guarantee you he gave the right answer and was like, I'll be there.
So that's the most interesting part of this to me as well. That's Alabama. Now, it'll never admit this publicly because it can't, but you're close. You say, obviously this is what happened. This invites those comparisons of Dabo Swinney and Alabama. This invites that conversation of, will Swinney be Nick Saban's replacement? If there was any behind-the-scenes orchestration, it doesn't prove that Swinney's the next Alabama coach, but it proves that Alabama's at least thinking in that regard.
Yeah, I think so. And when you talk to people that are close to the program, that is the thought in a lot of people's mind. And nobody's in Nick Saban's head. Lord knows everybody's been guessing when Nick Saban's going to leave Alabama. It could be 10 years. It could be 2 years. He's turning 66 on October 31st this year. He is getting up there in age. I don't know how much longer as Grandpa Nick Saban will want to coach this football team. My opinion, if Dabo stays at Clemson for another 8 years, he's going to stay at Clemson for a long time. I don't know that he waits out another 8 years until Nick Saban leaves, but it's like Dabo said earlier in the year. He's not going to close that door right now because he doesn't know what his team's going to look like in 8 years. He doesn't know who the AD is going to be. He doesn't know if Clemson fans will hate him in 8 years, so he's not closing that door either.
Let me do item number 2 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Speaking of Alabama, one of the hot topics of conversation in our show, including yesterday, was the state of the Alabama offense. Sometimes the numbers don't look great for Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts, but some people would say that the Tide offense is doing just fine. One of those people apparently is Christopher Walsh, who covers Alabama for SECCountry.com. Let me show you a little snippet here of a recent piece that Walsh wrote about the Alabama offense. He gives you the numbers for Hurts so far this season and says it would be easy to conclude that Hurts has regressed based on those numbers. But the opposite is true. For one, he hasn't had a turnover yet this season, and his passer efficiency rating is up. He's also more prolific in the running game with 517 yards and 69 carries. A year ago, he had 62 carries for 296 yards. So that's Walsh at SECCountry.com saying that the Alabama offense is actually better this year, even though the numbers for Hurts don't necessarily tell that story. You buying that? You're obviously watching these games very closely.
It's tough to buy. I think there is a couple of interesting statistics that he throws out there. First of all, the point differential is pretty much the same. But you got to think Alabama had 9 defensive touchdowns in those first 6 games last year. So that's kind of skewed off. It does make Alabama look a lot better right now than it was. Also, those toss sweeps, when Jalen was getting some of those passes complete, his completion percentage was through the roof last year.
Yeah.
He's kind of tossing the ball out in front of him, and the guy going on the sweep is actually catching the ball, and that's a completion. So I do like those numbers. I think that those kind of give you a little bit better of a feeling of how things are going this year. But the reason that Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, has 200 more rushing yards this year is because he's been forced to have 200 more rushing yards. I don't know that the protection has been there the way it was in last year's game, that he was able to go back and kind of try to develop that downfield passing game. I think he's had to take off. I think he had to take off against Florida State and some of these other games, but that's been what they've won games on, and so I'm not going to knock them for it. I don't know if I'm ready to say that Alabama's offense to me is better. I think they're better in the running game right now, averaging over 300 yards a game rushing, but I'm not ready to say their offense as a whole is better than it was.
I mean, I fast forwarded back to the spring and the summer when we were talking about Jalen Hurts virtually every day, and if you had told Alabama fans then, hey, Jalen Hurts through 6 games is going to have more rushing yards this year than he had last year, that's not the kind of thing that most Alabama fans would have taken as good news. And listen, Alabama fans are defending Hurts all the time in the wake of some of my criticism of Hurts, and I kind of get where that comes from. But, this notion of he's interception-free through 6 games. I don't care what quarterback you're talking about, Hurts or anybody else, that's more luck than skill. Hurts is not going to stay interception-free for the rest of the season. It's just not going to happen. So that's more of a statistical anomaly than it is some sort of proof about how good of a season that Hurts is actually having.
Well, and to me, it tells me what Brian Dabo is trying to do with Jalen Hurts. He understands, hey, this guy's legs, he might be the best running back on the team playing quarterback, honestly. I mean, the way he is able to kind of elude some of the defenders and get up the field, I think that Brian Dabo loves that, and I think that's why he is using him in that way. He doesn't want those, he doesn't want the attempts to get over 20 attempts. He wants this guy to be able to take off with his legs. It also tells me that Alabama, like I said, has not had the protection. He's had some of these runs are designed, and some of these are read options, but a lot of these are Jalen taking off and picking up yards for himself. I don't know that the protection, specifically on the right side of that offensive line in the last couple of weeks, has been that great. When you look at Lester Cotton and Matt Womack, I think there is room to improve, and when that happens, I think it'll give Jalen a better opportunity to throw down.
I mean, the version of the argument that you and I have had for months and months and months is who's the quarterback that's more dependable. I still say it's Jarrett Stidham at Auburn. I think so far the last few weeks that's starting to be proven true. I get what Alabama fans are going to say. Our guy keeps winning, and that's all that matters right now. That's one of the reasons why I think this is a really fun debate to have at the moment. It won't be proven until that Iron Bowl game or an SEC championship game and whatever happens after that. But it really is interesting how this debate that's been such a big part of SEC country life for months and months is actually playing out on the season right now. And I think there's evidence to support both guys on both sides. But I've been Stidham on this the entire time, and I've seen nothing so far this season to make me change my mind about that.
And I'm with you. I'm sticking to my arguments because my argument the entire offseason was this is not the Big 12 for Jarrett Stidham. When he absolutely, is getting that pass rush and he faces one of these dominant front defensive lines that he's going to see in the SEC, I thought he'd see a couple more of them than he has so far in the SEC. But when he sees those dominant defensive line, how's he going to react? Did not react well against Clemson, and I think that's really what you have to look at right now. If you're Auburn and you're looking at their long-term prospect, they're going to win most games with Jarrett Stidham. He's going to be efficient. He's going to do great things in the passing game, and that running game is going to carry them. But when I look at what they did against Clemson, I can't erase it out of my mind. A lot of changes since then. I feel a lot better about Gus Malzahn and Chip Lindsey since then, but if we're talking about just quarterbacks, that one's a hard one to erase.
Rick Kaiser says he's not a passer. Bama recruits high-class running backs, and the quarterback is leading, not good. So that's one thought there on Jalen Hurts. We'll see how it plays out. By the way, on a lighter note, Brian Murphy in the comments section says he needs you to give him a Go Cubs Go for good luck. People obviously remember
it's a big one today, buddy. It's a big one today. Gio Gonzalez taking the hill for the Nationals against the Cubs.
I'm already sweating.
I'm already sweating, man. I'm telling you right now.
He asked for a Go Cubs Go, not a breakdown of the game.
Go Cubs Go.
All right, item number 3 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 listen. By the way, we're less than 5 minutes away from Justin Ferguson. We'll talk about the Auburn scandal with him. Before that, though, item number 3 on our list. It is a big one for Florida on Saturday against Texas A&M, and reports are out there that Florida could be without 2 of its most important offensive weapons. I'm talking about wide receiver Tyree Cleveland, who didn't play last week, Kadarius Toney, who dealt with the ankle injury during the game last week against LSU. Can Florida beat Texas A&M if Toney and Cleveland don't play?
No, and I think it's as clear-cut as that. I would argue that these 2 injuries right now at this point in the season are bigger than Scarlett and Callaway getting suspended before week 1. I really do feel like that because I think Kadarius Toney has been the only thing really that you can depend on if you're the Florida offense. Now their 2 offensive playmakers are going to be Felipe Franks and Malik Davis. That's who they have on offense right now. Malik Davis is very good, but Kadarius Toney gave you that changeup. Now, will they try to put somebody else in the Wildcat role if he can't go? Absolutely. I've seen Jim McElwain do it with my own eyes. He's going to plug somebody else into that role, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be as good as Kadarius Toney will. And Tyree Cleveland, for all the question marks surrounding that wide receiver receiver core going into the year, has answered and been the A1 wide receiver for this team, as bad as their passing has looked. I think this is a huge blow to this team. I think that Texas A&M, when you look at what they're able to do offensively, the defense they were able to show against Alabama's running game last week, huge blow to Florida this weekend. I really heavily favor A&M now going into this game. And
you have to couple the potential Cleveland absence, the potential Kadarius Toney absence with the already suspension of Jordan Scarlett, the running back who hasn't played all season long. Antonio Callaway, who was Florida's best player on paper coming into the season, he hasn't played all season long. Now, obviously, Davis, the running back, Malik Davis, has kind of stepped up. He looks like the potential of a future star, but the absence of Cleveland, the absence of Toney is made worse by the fact that Scarlett and Callaway are already not playing.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is, at this point, I think this is a bigger deal than actually Callaway and Scarlett not being there. And I don't know who they're going to plug in at the Wildcat position. If it's going to be Powell, then I think that's going to be probably a good thing for this Gators offense. But Kadarius Toney has been the anomaly. I mean, he's been kind of the outlier in terms of this Gator offense. He's been what they've leaned on when they really did need to pick up some of these first downs, these third and mediums. They've been able to bring him in and really get him going. I think it's just tough, especially when you point to these two A&M defenders in the inside, these 2-3 techniques they have, Kike and Zaycoven Henderson, really good players. Going to be really tough for Florida to get the run game going this weekend, in my opinion, and that's going to leave Felipe Franks and whatever is left of the wide receiver core to try to pick up the pieces.
Greg Steele says Jim McElwain said Dre Massey's going to be in that Wildcat spot, and that does put some extra importance on Massey for this game, and it also further highlights just how far down the pecking order, to the point of not even being in consideration, Malik Zaire is at the moment. You know, Zaire had the complaints about not playing last week against LSU and the overall state of the Florida offense, but it's Dre Massey as the Wildcat, it's Felipe Franks as the quarterback. They're not a part of they're a part of what's going on in the field, and right now Malik Zaire just does not have a spot there.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to a couple of weeks ago when Luke Del Rio was starting and Kadarius Toney was running the Wildcat, if you'd have told Florida fans that in 2 weeks they're going to be Felipe Franks is going to be back as being the starting quarterback and you're going to have Dre Massey running the Wildcat, it's just not a good look. I'm telling you, I loved everything this guy was doing, especially Kadarius Toney. And this is kind of knocking Florida off kilter once again. How many blows are they going to take and keep getting back up on their feet? I think this is one they're not going to be able to recover from.
All right, coming up in just a moment, big news coming out of Arkansas, but a very different situation for Brad Bielema than initially thought. We'll get to that here on AT&T SEC Country Live. I'll remind you that's Mike Johnson. My name is Brandon Adams. Of course, AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Before any of that, though, big report also coming out of ESPN about allegations of academic impropriety at Auburn. A player from the 2015 team allegedly had an exam taken for him by an academic mentor provided to him for Auburn. That's the report from ESPN.com. Auburn did have a response to this. We'll show you some of this on the screen, what Auburn had to say here, and then get ready to welcome in Justin Ferguson to AT&T SEC Country Live. Here is the statement from Auburn. The player, which we're conducting investigations, not a member of the current team, not a member of the team at the time of the allegation. He's a former player who came back to school to complete his degree. As you know from our statement, he categorically denies the claim. Auburn goes on to say the allegation made in the ESPN story is false, based on our review to date, and goes on to sort of reiterate that over and over again. Let's find out more about what we know about this right now in Auburn, Alabama. Say hello to Justin Ferguson here on AT&T SEC Country Live. So, Justin, the Auburn community has had a few hours here, day or so, to kind of react to this ESPN report. That was the initial statement. But how about the unofficial stuff? People in the town, people around the football program, fans even. What are people saying about what ESPN has reported here this week?
Well, right now for Auburn, it's a situation where when it rains, it pours. And Auburn's had the problems so far with the basketball with Chuck Person, had the softball scandal a few weeks ago. This scandal, though, feels a little bit different because just of the way that ESPN had reported it, ESPN's had to go back and correct themselves a couple of times on it. It seemed a little sensationalized. And a lot of Auburn people, or a lot of people around Auburn think this is one of those situations where maybe a disgruntled employee, there is some influence here to try to put more pressure on this athletic department right now with some more stuff coming out and putting Jay Jacobs, athletic director, a little more under fire. That's what it's felt like from the beginning in this one, because it's not really a strong report and it's not really a strong case against Auburn right now, especially considering it would be a player who is no longer on the team and then came back to finish his degree. But it was one of those things where it just feels like more and more pressure is just getting pushed on to the current administration at Auburn.
And I want to talk to you about Jay Jacobs' role in all this, or the impact on Jay Jacobs here in a moment. But before that, you mentioned the sensationalization potentially of the report. The other thing that, Justin, that kind of comes to my mind is, and I'm no Auburn fan here, but I will defend the Auburn fans here for a moment. It seems like a lot of times from the big national media, stuff like this seems timed to kind of coincide with either the start of a big athletic event or, in the case of Auburn, a big season here. I mean, what do you make of the timing of this coming out right as Auburn is kind of getting their season rolling and obviously getting a lot of attention on the football field? Is there a connection between the timing of all this?
I think so. I really do think so. That Auburn, we've seen this happen before with Auburn and Jay Jacobs. You go back to 2011 and 2012 when there was pressure on Jay Jacobs to step down, and he ended up saving his job. But there were some more stories that came out from the national media that they didn't really have a ton of validity to it once it was all said and done. Auburn didn't get any NCAA trouble over it. I think the timing is very, very key. I mean, the power struggle going on right now at Auburn between the powers that be and Jay Jacobs and those people loyal to Jay Jacobs. Auburn's got a new administration in with a president. Just the things that have gone around with the athletic department right now, it feels like the timing for something to change, and it hasn't happened yet. And I think you're getting some cases sometimes where certain people in certain places, they're trying to put a little bit more pressure on it. And in a way you can do that is you can use the media to help that out. I think, whether this story is true or false or not, the fact that it came out right now is very, very interesting because of all the stuff that's happened with basketball and softball. And the funny thing about all of it is Auburn's football team's kind of given Jay Jacobs a little bit of breathing room. When this stuff first started coming up real heavy, it was when Auburn had struggled to start the season, had that loss against Clemson. The football team's bought him a little bit more breathing room. I think there's still very much a lot of frustration around Auburn and Auburn fans and people who have power and they're donating money and stuff like that around Jay Jacobs. But it's not as much on Gus Malzahn and what's happened with the football program because they're turning around and they're a top 10 team.
Andre Smith in the comment section says, "War damn Eagle, every time it's our year, some bogus story scandal comes out to distract our team, but it won't work." Jeffrey Payne, slightly different opinion. He says, "Jay Jacobs needs to go." That's the athletic director. That's his statement there. And I guess very simple question to close out our conversation. Whether this is more smoke or more fire, but you connect this to the basketball, you connect that to the softball and everything else that's happened in the past, can Jay Jacobs survive all the sort of turmoil that seems to be surrounding the Auburn athletic program?
I think it's going to be tough. I was really surprised he stayed around after what happened with the softball when the stories that came out, the reports and the investigations and the accusations of cover-ups going on with that. And then the basketball story, even though what happened with Chuck Person, Auburn might not have known anything about it in terms of the administration, in terms of Jay Jacobs, but still, it's just another problem for Auburn. And with a new president coming in, it could be time to reset with the athletic department. I will say one thing, though. Jay Jacobs has worked at Auburn pretty much his whole life. He played football here. He was a walk-on. He had 1 year when he was a high school coach. And then since then, he's been working with the athletic department in some sense. So I don't think a firing will be the thing that comes out unless more and more stuff with more validity, I think, than what happened yesterday with the Tudor story. I think it's going to be a situation where I would expect him to kind of step away sometime, maybe after football season, maybe later on in the academic year, because of what he has done and how long he's been at Auburn. But man, it's been a really tough few months for Auburn athletics, and the timing just seems right that something needs to change.
Justin, great stuff from you. Look forward to more coverage at SECCountry.com. Thanks for being here with us today on AT&T SEC Country Live.
Thanks, guys.
So I'm a big believer that what Justin said right there is true, and we'll obviously give some quick thoughts on this. I think the timing's suspicious. I think the ESPN report seemed a little flimsy. I think if Auburn wants to slow play this, nothing ever comes out of it. This does not feel like a scandal with an obvious smoking gun for me.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And if that's coming from a Georgia guy and an Alabama guy,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Then I think that we can kind of start to file this that way, because their athletic departments come out and said, "Listen, this player categorically denies everything that's happened." The tutor has come out and said this is, categorically denies what's happened, and they've also said that this was filed by a disgruntled employee that was kind of suspended back on August 31st. So all those things put together, and I have a lot of of faith in what Mark Schlabach writes for the most part at ESPN, but this one does have that feel that maybe this is just a timing piece and maybe they're trying to stir up a whirlwind.
Let's move to a very different report for item number 4 in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10. Really excellent reporting by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, because one of the things that we've been hearing for a while here is one of the impediments to Arkansas potentially moving on from Coach Brett Bielema at season's end was the expensive buyout that was thought to be attached to his contract. But the Democrat-Gazette dives deep on this, hires some legal counsel to investigate the wording of the contract, and what they find out is because of an de-escalating buyout on the way down here, that at season's end, if Arkansas does want to buy out Bielema, according to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the price tag only $5.9 million. This seems to make it likely, I believe, that Arkansas will move on from Bielema at the end of this season, because Bielema's not saving his job with this team. This is the worst in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. And it's more about what I see around Arkansas than it is so much about Brett Bielema. And first of all, he's had his struggles. He's 27-29 there as a head coach. He hasn't been very good. They have been mediocre or worse than mediocre since he showed up, it seems like. And they were taking steps forward. But when I look around the rest of the SEC West right now, I see an opportunity for Arkansas, because at the start of the season, we weren't talking about Brett Bielema. We were talking about Matt Luke. We were talking about Kevin Sumlin. We were talking about some of the other coaches in the SEC. Right now, Sumlin's saving his job. Ed Orgeron's not going to go anywhere this year. Ole Miss is going to have those sanctions. Right now, Dan Mullen looks like he's going to be back in the saddle for next year at Mississippi State. So I see a little bit of a window here for Arkansas. If they move if they move on from Brett Bielema this year, I think this is their best opportunity to go out and highlight a coach that wants to be in the SEC West. Maybe this is the time, because I think if you wait another year and Brett Bielema is bad again next year, you might be going up against a lot stiffer competition trying to find your head coach.
I think the point you make is actually a pretty good one, actually. And one of the things that makes it more necessary to move on from Bielema may be the reaction of former players like Matt Jones, the one-time Arkansas quarterback who was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars as a wide receiver. He was on Bo Mattingly's radio show out in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we'll show you the quote here from Jones. We actually had some quotes from him the other day, and this is maybe even more provocative. He says, "I get how some people get if they're saying I'm criticizing them, meaning the team, but I want the Hogs to win every single game. I want the best for them to compete, win 8-9 games a year." That's kind of cute and quaint, actually. I just don't know if whatever his philosophy is, where it starts with the recruiting and everything, how's he going to go through it? I just don't know if you're going to be able to say he's going to average 8 wins a year. I mean, can we give Arkansas 8 wins a year, please?
Absolutely. They deserve 8 wins a year, like Matt Jones was saying.
But don't you love the fact that would be enough? That you got Auburn going to fire its coach if he goes 10-2. Well, Arkansas just wants to win 8 games.
Yeah, I know. And that's what that kind of leans back into my argument that I was making. Is I think this is Arkansas's window. I really do. First of all, I think you're going to be battling Tennessee for whatever head coach. And we talked about that yesterday, and whether or not these two coaching jobs are kind of on the same plane. And some people I've read that really have your argument that say, you know what, Tennessee and Arkansas are near the same plane. There's a lot of people involved in Arkansas's program that can spit out that money to get a proven head coach to come in there and win 8 or 9 games a year, like he was just saying.
Yeah, this was a team in the top 5 of the country not that long ago.
I know. And this is a team who really has had a lot of good players been churned out of there in the last 10 years, at least since I've been paying attention to their program. You're talking about guys like Darren McFadden and Felix Jones that have come out and been great players. And so I think Arkansas fans deserve this. I think that Brett Bielema is a good coach. I know everybody loves him. Everybody, kind of his kind of attitude that he has towards the game. But I think that this is a window for them. If it's only, what does it say right here? $159,000 a month. Spend that money, get out of there, and understand that this is your opportunity to get out ahead of some of these other programs in the SEC and hire your guy.
That is Mike Johnson. I'm Brandon Adams. It's AT&T's SEC Country Live. AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Coming up in just a moment, we'll take a look at the slate of SEC games from a gambling perspective. Mike and I'll give us we'll give you our thoughts on who's going to win these games here this weekend. We'll do that coming up. Before we get to that, though, let's call this, I guess, the wink heard around the world or seen around the world. Nick Saban doing his final media availability of the week yesterday, leading into the game against Arkansas on Saturday. And our Mark Burnett from SECCountry.com captured this exchange of Saban with a reporter, and at the end, Saban feeling a little proud of himself for giving what he thought was a joke. Watch him turn to the side and give a wink to the PR staffer from Alabama. Take a look at Saban, a little different side of the coach.
The on-field persona of those two, how they are on the field.
I guess I got to back up. I mean, I'm from West Virginia, so what exactly does persona mean? Is that the same thing as persona?
Sure.
Okay.
I love that wink.
I do too.
Now, you got to realize there's some context for this.
Yes.
This is the same week we've also seen Saban spinning around on a scooter. Do you remember earlier this week when we showed you this? So is this an example of all of a sudden he's winking at people, he's spinning around on scooters? Is Saban finally loosening up a little bit? Is this the lighter side of Nick Saban?
I think we also need to give more context to what Mark said in the article. There was some ESPN camera crews in this press conference, and it was almost like the PR guy Josh Maxson, who's always at Saban's side. It's almost like he went in there and was like, "Listen, there's national crews here. I know that you're probably going to be fiery on a Wednesday press conference. Just kind of keep it in check." And it was almost like that was Nick Saban's answer, like, "Okay, I got you right here. Let me give this to you."
So I can't decide. There's one of two things that are probably true here. I mean, A, Kirby Smart is just beating Saban for every recruit he wants right now. Is this Saban trying to provide some youthful energy here with the winks and the go-karts and things like that? Or the flip side of this, does Saban realize his team's so good that he can finally loosen up and relax? And that's the real fear for the rest of the SEC here, that this hard-driving Nick Saban, who's kind of always, nose to the grindstone, he's like, you know what, I've seen the rest of the SEC. This ain't no big deal this year, and so therefore I'm going to loosen up and have a good time. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but it's potentially bad news for the rest of the SEC.
I don't think it's either one of those. I think that people are just finally, and I've told you this a million times on the show, this is Nick Saban to me. This is the Nick Saban I knew. This is the Nick Saban that was my coach. People are just starting to get a little bit of window into seeing what he does. It's become kind of a legendary thing that what Nick Saban acts in press conference. That's just not how he is personally. I think he's just let it show through a little bit more.
By the way, in the comment section, hold on, I got to go back to this. So you saw,
I knew it was going to get him.
So you saw this kind of stuff from Saban,
yes.
Spinning out on go-karts,
yes.
Winking, having a good time.
Yes.
Saban behind closed doors when you played at Alabama. He was a fun-loving, loose, light-hearted guy.
Extremely fun coach. He was always cracking jokes with players. He's always making fun of people. He was that's the guy I knew. I mean, he was the guy, like I said, I told the story during the summer, pulling me on the tube behind his boat and absolutely trying to kill me. I mean, he was trying to kill me and laughing the whole time he's doing it.
But see, I always
that's the
assume,
coach I've always
now I know that 2009 you didn't do as much of this kind of stuff. I always assume that when you see him pulling that boat, that's just his way of, hey, let's video this one and get some more recruits.
yeah. Send the drone over.
Right, yeah, exactly. So we can make a video out of it.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it is, but that's like I said, that's the coach Saban that I've always known. And I think most of the guys that are around him on a daily basis, and Mark Burnett has said this many times, most of the guys that are in that conference room on a daily basis, the beat reporters, they see this Nick Saban. They see him a lot. I think this just kind of comes out sometimes and becomes a national story.
Drew Stevens, I like his comment. Saban's shrink probably told him to live a little. The man is the GOAT, greatest of all time, he means, in college football. He should enjoy the ride. Drew, I agree with you on that. To be that good and not enjoy it seems like a real travesty, a real shame. But furthermore, tell me if you agree with me on this. And this is not me just poking you with a stick. I mean this in all sincerity. I think a looser Nick Saban's actually a little better than Nick Saban.
I do.
I think players are better when they're looser. I think coaches may also be better when they're a little looser. I think sometimes this sort of perfectionist, never satisfied with anything, lends to a tendency to be a little bit of an over-manager, a micromanager. And I think that a looser Saban, if this is indeed his personality, is actually better for his program.
I 100% agree. And I think the story came out a couple of years ago that he was leaving the national championship game and was mad that he had been a week behind on recruiting. That's kind of the Saban that a lot of people know. Hey, I know we just won yesterday, but God, I'm a week behind on recruiting. I got a lot of time to make up between now and National Signing Day. And I think that is the perception that Nick Saban gets because that's what he is. He's a workaholic. I mean, there's no question about it. The guy works, I don't know, 16 hours a day and goes home and sleeps and then comes back and does the same thing. But he does need to loosen up a little bit. And I think this is a good window into seeing that maybe this is the Nick Saban that will extend his time at Alabama for a while. Maybe this is not the guy who's going to work himself into the ground and be gone by age 67. Maybe this is a guy who says, I got to find a medium if I'm going to do this for another 10 years.
All right, each and every week here on AT&T SEC Country Live, we take a look at the games upcoming for the weekend from a point spread perspective. We go on the record. We get some right, we get some wrong. But listen, there's a good chance that many of you will pick them better than we do. That's why we give you the MyBookie website there at the end for you to make some money off your expertise. Let's take a look at some of those SEC point spreads right now as we do our MyBookie best bets. And there are some tough lines here.
Oh, man.
BYU, Mississippi State, that's a big spread. My guess is that Mississippi State's probably fine this week, although that feels like a lot of points. Tennessee minus 3.5. This, to me, feels like Vegas telling the public something that it doesn't already know. That for the public who's completely written off the Vols, Vegas is telling you as a 3.5-point favorite that Las Vegas and MyBookie has not written off the Vols just yet.
I agree, and I think it also tells you that when you saw that performance from South Carolina last week, that maybe it looked a little better than it should have. Maybe, and this is a team in South Carolina that I told you a couple times, I can't figure them out. They get their yardage total doubled by North Carolina State in the opening game, and they still lose. I mean, they still win the game, and somehow we're still scratching our heads going, how did South Carolina beat NC State? That's been the story for them the whole whole year for me.
By the way, this is also a brilliant line from my bookie on that Tennessee-South Carolina game, because anything less than 3.5, I love Tennessee.
Yeah.
Anything, anything else, I'm obviously a little bit more on South Carolina. I think that's almost a perfect point spread. My guess is, though, Tennessee may play a little better, even though as a team right now I like South Carolina better. This may not be a bad spot for Tennessee. Vandy, Ole Miss, I don't know what to say about that. How about Auburn as a 7-point favorite on the road at LSU? LSU just saved its season with a win. That feels like too many points to me.
No, I've got to side with Auburn on this one.
Okay.
And I know that people have a ton of questions about that line at 7 points. Auburn has looked incredibly good the last few weeks, but still for me, even though LSU won last weekend, they didn't tell me anything about what their offense is. And they still don't have Arden Key. Darius Geis is not where he needs to be. Both of those players really should be the ones that kind of hold this team down. We haven't seen them really come to the forefront this year, and Auburn really seems to be clicking on all cylinders.
I've been high on Auburn. Let's make sure we give Auburn credit if it does go get that win. It's a better win than some people are going to give it credit for. Let's quickly rattle through a few more of these as well. Alabama, another huge favorite, although it's worth pointing out, did not cover the number last week. Georgia, a huge favorite. It's won all of its SEC games by at least 28 points. My bookie now responding in kind with the big 30-point number there. I also want to go to Texas A&M, Florida. Florida minus 2.5. I'm all over Texas A&M on this one as a road underdog to win the game outright. I have talked up Texas A&M for months. This is the spot where they got to pay me back. Do not let me down right here.
I'm with you. If I'm making bets this weekend, I'm holding back from most of those, and I'm throwing it all on this Texas A&M line, because when you talk about Florida, when you talk about their lack of efficiency last week, their inability to really stop LSU, some of the things they were doing offensively, and that's not a good LSU offense. You add in the fact that Tyree Cleveland and Kadarius Toney will both be out. I think that if Florida does find a way to win this game, then Jim McElwain, he's coach of the week. I mean, I don't know how that you kind of dodge all the bullets that he's dodged. I love Texas A&M in this game. I think their ground game becomes too much for Florida, and I think Kellen Mond is he's gotten better each week. He's not a great quarterback yet, but he has improved steadily. I think Kevin Sumlin will do the things necessary this weekend.
We've got 3 pieces of good news for you. Piece of good news number 1, you're probably better at picking these games than we are, and piece of good news number 2 is there's a place you can go to prove that. MyBookie.ag. The reason why I recommend that website, because they are the website known for the fast, no-hassle payout when you do win. But the best news of all is item number 3 here, that when you sign up at mybookie.ag right now, your first deposit can be matched up to 100%. But you got to use the promo code SEC Live. The promo code SEC Live at mybookie.ag. You can get your first deposit matched up to 100%. You play, you win, you get paid. It's as simple as that. mybookie.ag. Just make sure you use our promo code SEC Live and you get your first deposit matched up to 100%. All right, let's move on to item number 6 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So finally the media seems to be noticing something we've been talking about for a while, that Auburn is getting better, and Gus Malzahn, for the moment, looks like a pretty good architect of the program here at Auburn. One of the guys that's noticed that lately is CBS Sports' Gary Danielson, who goes on the Paul Feinbaum show this week. We'll show you what Danielson had to say here. He said one of the great coaching jobs being done right now is Gus Malzahn at Auburn. They're going to be a legitimate threat to anyone because they're ironing out the kinks. They're a good, solid football team, and I know they're a better team right now than they were at Clemson. So that's Gary Danielson saying, you know what, I like this Auburn team right now, and it's kind of nice to see the rest of the media kind of paying attention to this.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the last statement he had there, they're a good, solid football team, is the biggest part of this, because that's what they are. They are a team that is so well-rounded. You can point to the Clemson game and say maybe that offensive line could have been an Achilles heel, and that's what Gus Malzahn said, but they have made the changes necessary to make them good up front. Austin Golson sliding out to left tackle. They've changed some things up. Casey Dunn getting some starts there in the middle. This is a team that doesn't have any holes for me. The linebacking core is as good as you're going to find in college football. The secondary has been very good. They're able to rush the passer in a lot of these different long passing yardage downs. I don't know where you go if you're going to beat this football team. I think you can try to take away some of the things they do good. Obviously, I'd try to take away the run if I was a defensive coordinator going against them right now. But who's not to say that this young receiving core that has shown a lot of output the last few weeks, and Jarrett Stidham won't beat you over the top. I think that's what makes them really scary. They don't seem to have any holes.
We'll talk to more Auburn fans in our comment section in just a moment. Before any of that, though, let's also now turn our attention to Gainesville, Florida. We were talking about the Texas A&M Florida game a moment ago. Let's welcome in a guy who's all over that for SECCountry.com. Zach Alba, Vernie, back here again on AT&T SEC Country Live. First of all, Zach, thanks for your time this evening. Welcome back to our program. And is it a done deal here that Tyree Cleveland, Kadarius Toney, that these guys will not play for Florida on Saturday, or is there some opportunity for them to get healthy enough to work their way back on the field?
No, honestly, Brandon, I just don't see a way where those guys play. Based on McElwain's comments, just the fact that those guys haven't been able to do much practice, I don't think that the Florida Gators can rely on them this week and really make them a part of their game plan. And I don't know when those guys are going to get back. I mean, a high ankle sprain and a separated shoulder, those are two serious injuries, and sometimes they can't take a week's to heal. So that's going to hurt Florida in this game because we all know Texas A&M, they can put up points, and they found, some success with true freshman quarterback Kellen Mond, where Florida on the other side of the ball with their freshman quarterback Felipe Frank, we thought that he had kind of found himself maybe in that second half against Vanderbilt. He comes off the bench for the injured Luke Del Rio, leads the Gators to a victory, but against LSU, he just regressed. He did not have the game that he needed to have in order for Florida to win, and now there's question marks about that quarterback position once again.
Yeah, Zach, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the interesting things we've been hearing from the comment section this week, everybody's been talking about maybe the high school play calling of Jim McElwain and Doug Nussmeier. We also hear from a lot of people that are talking about Felipe Franks and his inability to kind of develop in that quarterback position. Which one is it for you? Is it the play calling? Is it the players? Is it a combination of both?
Well, I mean, there's always a number of factors that go into play, but I think if we're just trying to narrow it down when it comes to the development of Felipe Franks and who that is ultimately on, knowing his background, knowing where he was coming in, and then also just calling like it is, look at the track record of Doug Nussmeier and Jim McElwain in the past with quarterbacks that they've developed. They certainly have a history of being able to get the job done. Felipe Franks is just a guy, and up until this point, that's what he's been. I mean, he's not been the special talent that I think everybody was hoping that he could be. He still has a while to go before he can fulfill that potential. He's certainly shown flashes. He certainly has a lot of ability, but being a redshirt freshman and having his deficiencies, those things are starting to show up. He's not as turnover prone, I think, as many feared. He's not making a lot of mistakes. It's just the production is not there. The aggressiveness, his confidence that he can take shots and really trust his arm, he just hasn't developed that, and it's holding back Florida's offense. And if it continues to do that, there is a chance that we might see Malik Zaire.
Speaking of that, I actually wanted to finish up our conversation, Zach, by mentioning Malik Zaire because he voiced some displeasure, at least what I think most of us read as displeasure, when he tweeted on Saturday night last weekend after the loss to LSU about the state of the Florida offense, his lack of involvement in it. Now, Jim McElwain kind of played that off this week when he spoke to you and other reporters. But is that a problem for this team, that Zaire is not playing and maybe feeling free to sort of voice his displeasure about that?
Yeah, well, it's funny because Jim McElwain said that, hey, you can usually predict who are the guys that are going to complain about their playing time, alluding to the fact that those guys are usually on the bench. Now, having said that, I understand why Zaire has been in the position that he's been. It was clear in that Michigan game that he still had a long way to go, that missing spring practice and coming in and trying to learn this offense and just a preseason camp was not a recipe for success. It has taken him some time to learn the system, to get acclimated to not only Florida, but the speed of the SEC and just the rise in talent and competition that he's facing here. But I do think that if he gets his opportunity, whether it's this week, whether it's after the bye week against Georgia, I think that you're going to see a better version of Zaire, and I'm curious to see if the offense can be more effective with him behind center.
Zach, that's a really interesting thought to leave our conversation with. We'll look forward to seeing how that plays out in maybe the weeks ahead. Thanks for your time here today on AT&T SEC Country Live. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely, guys.
By the way, beard was still looking good for Mr. Alba.
He's solid, man. He's stepped his game up. He's got the hair parted and combed and gelled. Man. He's strong.
In our comment section, Charlie Adams also bringing up, hey, what's it going to take for McElwain to lose his job there at Florida? I don't know if we're ready to talk about that yet for a coach that's won the East the last 2 years, but I do think Charlie's question in our comment section does reflect that I think McElwain's popularity is very thin. Now, it's wide because Florida's a big fan base, and obviously Gators fans enjoyed going to the SEC Championship game the last 2 years. But I think it's thin in that you've already seen, as you pointed out, a lot of criticism coming off that loss to LSU. Yeah. It took one bad game, really two if you want to count the Michigan game, but does not take much to bring the critics out of the woodworks.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously too early to talk about him losing his job, but I'm with you. I think that he's starting to kind of venture out on thin ice. But he has had an uphill battle this year. I mean, this is a team who was replacing their entire defense and their defensive coordinator. You thought they'd be able to lean on their offense, and the suspensions hit going into the year, and they lose probably their two best offensive players. So he is kind of rolling with the punches. This team hasn't looked very good. He promised us a great offensive line that they could kind of lean on. The offensive line up and down week in and week out. I'm not really sold on their play either. And so I think it's Jim McElwain that is really was selling a bag of goods about what the offense would be, and it hasn't turned out that way, so that's what makes him look bad. I think that usually, had they had Antonio Callaway and Jordan Scarlett and they were just losing a couple of games, that he would get the benefit of the doubt because the defense was returning the way they were, not intact from last year. But the way things have played out, his inability to still not get a quarterback on the field, and Luke Del Rio going down with injury, now these last couple of injuries, a lot of question marks being thrown around in my boat.
Jason Scroggs, by the way, says just going to the SEC championship game will wear thin also, and I think for Florida fans that may be the case a little bit as well. All right, that's Mike Johnson. I'm Brandon Adams. It's AT&T SEC Country Live. AT&T proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T Entertainment Your Way. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit divided on our next topic here. Can I like lay all this out for you?
Yeah,
because as a guy's guy, you know, former player yourself, I need your full expertise on this. It's the subject matter number 7 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So Georgia has a very talented tight end. His name is Isaac Nauta. Now Nauta, a former 5-star prospect coming out of high school, not heavily involved in the Georgia offense yet this season. He met with reporters about that yesterday. But another subject that came up is I don't know if you call these. This is probably a little bit more than frosted tips, right? This is like full-on, like frosted tips is just a little bit, right? I'm talking to people on the other side of the glass here. This is more like full-on blonde hair. Let you see Nauta and the hairstyle that he's rocking here, and you tell me what you think about all this. Here's Isaac Nauta fielding questions from reporters.
No, I just like to do things a little differently and like to have fun. So it's the change in the hair color part of that. Yeah, I mean that was just pure impulse. You know, I just wanted to do it. Why did you decide to do that? And there's so much stress in this life, I never know when my hair is going to go. So, you know, might as well do something with it while I can.
Well, what did Mom say about that, Doug?
She did it. So
she did it. Okay.
Yeah, she's a former hairstylist. So,
okay.
But she wasn't happy at first. But when she did it, it's all right. It's just hair.
So I'm divided on this. On the one hand, I think that he's got great advice to live by. Hey, none of us know when our hair is going to just start falling out, so you might as well do something fun with it while you have it. Trust me. If I'd known by the time I was 40 I was going to have this thin hair, it's turning gray in other places, I would have gone longer, blonder, everything in between. So from that standpoint, I understand exactly what Nauta is saying there. But do you want your tight end to have blonde, bleached hair? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, at first when I saw it, I was like, what is this guy doing? But then I kind of took a step back and started to see things through his eyes. First of all, he's only got 5 catches this year. I think if you were a baseball player, you're like, you know, why not change things up?
That's a great point.
Maybe this will change up my luck on the football field.
That's a great point.
Maybe the quarterbacks will be able to see my blonde hair better when I'm streaking down the field. Also, kid's in college. I mean, he's what, 19, 20? He's a true sophomore. Do whatever you got to do and get the crazy stuff out of the way in college, because by the time you get in the business world, you will not be able to do that kind of stuff. So as much as I hate the look, I love the beard, I kind of hate the look, but you know what? If that's what he wants to do, I'm all about it.
And I would imagine, now I'm not single, you're essentially not single. We have a lot of people that work with us that are single. I imagine big strapping tall guy like that, blonde hair, dark beard, that probably just gets him more attention. I'm not telling you that's a great look for the ladies. In fact, we have some ladies working with us. Thumbs up, thumbs down on the dark beard, blonde hair.
Oh man.
So I'm getting thumbs down from the ladies on this, but it does get you that extra attention. I mean, when you're the football player, you want to sort of like announce, hey, the football players walked into the bar. I mean, that probably helps you do that a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I guarantee you that his teammates are going to have some kind of nickname for him by the end of the week. I mean, it'll be like Q-Tip, or they're going to call him Cisco, or something like. They're going to be firing off names at him left and right. You're right. It kind of brings attention your direction.
Daniel Robbins says I'd make a great redhead. What do you think about me with red hair? Listen,
I don't know.
My hair is going to be gone eventually. I'm just going to enjoy what I have right now.
I'm just trying to hold off the gray for now.
Frankie Payne said, how about making the beard pink? I don't know about that. Jamie Bailey says his hair still looks better than the Florida's Gator skin uniforms. Daniel Beard agrees with him on that. So It always comes back to those uniforms eventually.
I definitely agree with that statement too. The hair, we can be borderline about the hair all we want to. Those uniforms are just bad.
Speaking of which, we've got more, believe it or not, on these uniforms coming up, because things have taken an even stranger turn. We'll tell you about that coming up in just a moment. Before we get to that, though, item number 8 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So I was already excited about the Tennessee-South Carolina game on Saturday, but I might be a little more excited about things right now based on a little trash talk here as of late between the two teams. Here's how it all starts, and I'll see if I can walk you through this as quickly as possible. So South Carolina, who has a very aggressive video department, made a video honoring one of their defensive backs. You may remember the old Revis Island in the NFL. Well, South Carolina thinks they have their own version of that right now. Let me show you what was on social media from the Gamecocks recently.
Beat the odds, do numbers, and remain humble. Top time punches, I'm so used to this. Smoking at the pound, I'm so used to this.
So this is a nice little, video here from South Carolina about Fenton, their defensive back, making some plays here. At the end, you're going to see a nice little graphic with the Fenton Island, kind of making this seem like a nice, there you go. There's the Fenton Island with the nice logo graphic, almost like you're going on vacation. Well, one of the Tennessee players decided he'd have some fun with that. He sort of tweeted back about the notion of Fenton Island. We'll show you what's on Twitter from Tyler Bird here. He said, I just spent 30 minutes trying to book a flight to, quote, Fenton Island. No airline recognized that destination. I guess it doesn't exist. And then he got jumped by like 3 South Carolina players, really maybe even more than that, on social media. We'll show you some of these responses to South Carolina. Back to Bird here. Dante Sawyer said he must not have seen what happened to Jalen Hurd last year from running his mouth. Somebody else also kind of jumped in on this. Here's Chris Lamon saying the last time on the island, you see Bird down there on the ground as South Carolina celebrates. And I think we have even one more here.
This is the best one.
Terry Cougar said, dude's got 2 more catches than me, and I haven't even played offense this year with the laughing emojis. I love this as a precursor to a game that was already going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. And we had Mike Griffith on yesterday, and he was talking about the struggles of the wide receiver corps at Tennessee and why Quentin Dormady is being benched, saying essentially that you can blame the wide receiver corps from Tennessee. They have not stepped up and been what everybody thought they would. Obviously, a couple of injuries playing the part, but they have not been able to get separation. So I think that trend's going to continue. And I think that South Carolina actually has the bragging rights on this game. When you look at Tennessee last year, coming off the bye week and taking the loss to South Carolina 27-24 last year, I think that was a terrible look for Butch Jones. It looks even worse right now. And so I think Fenton Island, from the videos I've seen and watched him play this year, I think he's pretty good. He might have the ability to go out and back up this traffic.
So a couple things for me on this game. First of all, there's a lot of reason to believe that South Carolina as a program, not just a team, but as a program, has more momentum than Tennessee. They're definitely recruiting better. They're going head-to-head for a lot of programs in the South, and they're winning some of those battles in a way that Tennessee right now is just not. I think this is an important game for Tennessee to change that narrative a little bit. And if I can give you just like a really simplistic, probably overly simplistic piece of analysis on this game, I think John Kelly, the running back, is going to be better than Jake Bentley, the quarterback. For me, that's what it comes down to. Can Kelly live up to his hype? A lot of people would say he's one of the best running backs in the SEC. Can he be better as an offensive playmaker than what Bentley's going to be for South Carolina? That may be overly simplistic, but that may also be what decides this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. To me, it's going to be an extension of what you just said. Tennessee's offensive line, what are we going to get? We've seen some ups and some downs, a lot of downs for the Tennessee offensive line. You talk about that left guard position, the right tackle position, have not been very good. Trey Smith has kind of been a highlight as a true freshman on this Tennessee offensive line. South Carolina, for their part, haven't really been able to rush the passer. They haven't been able to find people up front. Will Muschamp's pointed to this a couple times. We're playing extremely young guys and trying to find people that are playmakers up front for South Carolina. Which one of those 2 downsides are going to win? Are you going to see South Carolina be able to expose this Tennessee offensive line, or does Tennessee turn around and run it right down South Carolina's throat? That's going to be, to me, what tells the story.
You mentioned the struggles of the Tennessee wide receivers. Scarlett Redpath Simpkins says, don't blame the players, blame the coach. So that's a thought on that. Speaking of coaches, let's move on to item number 9 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So Auburn LSU, get ready to go at 3:30 Eastern time on Saturday, 2:30 Central. And for LSU fans who are used to the night games and frankly used to some late Friday nights themselves, I guess the first day game of the season, feeling a little early, even though it's 2:30 Central Time, 2:30 in the afternoon Central Time. Well, Ed Orgeron, the LSU coach, had some advice for the LSU fans on Saturday about this day game. He said hopefully they can get a little up a little earlier and put a little something in their coffee. Do you really need to turbocharge your coffee to get ready for a game that starts at 2:30 in the afternoon?
Yeah, when I saw this quote, I was like, man, I can't believe this is going to be the the 11 a.m. or the noon game. I can't believe they're putting Auburn and LSU in that slot. And then I looked at it and I was like, what? This is the CBS game. This is the midday game. You're talking about they got to get up early and get going for that. Listen, I've made this trip with Alabama in the last couple of years and gone down to Baton Rouge, and maybe Ed Orgeron has a point because Friday night down in Baton Rouge is a big deal, so maybe they do need to get up around noon and start getting something in their coffee. This is a huge game for them as a program. I think Auburn, if you're not careful, Auburn can come in and wipe the floor with you.
Yeah, at LSU and in Baton Rouge, Friday night, Saturday morning, okay? Yeah. That's what Friday night is at LSU, it's Saturday morning.
Yeah, and we saw what happened to Jarrett Stidham the first time he went into the first Death Valley he's been into this year, and now he's going into another Death Valley this year. I think the fans become an important part of what LSU is trying to do Saturday.
Justin Turner says, got to turbocharge that coffee. I'm not even sure what we're going with that one. I better stop reading that because I'm not quite sure we're heading for that one. Cliff Nelson says, we hate day games. Yes, we need more time to prepare, and he gives you the emojis. He's got a cocktail, 2 beers there. So, yeah, in his comment there on Facebook Live, so clearly he understands that. And listen, I don't have a rooting interest in this game. I've obviously picked Auburn, so I'm going to stick with that pick. But there is a part of me as just a college football fan that wants Death Valley to feel like Death Valley on Saturday. I'd really love to hear the roars from the crowd. I'd love for, even in a day game, I'd love for that atmosphere to be big for this game.
I'm with you on that. Add in the fact that Les Miles and the 2017 are going to be in the house at halftime this week, and I think you do have a little bit of an ability. This is a game for LSU that's going to be on a national stage with Auburn coming in. They've got to kind of wreak havoc. Their crowd has to wreak havoc against this Auburn offense. This is an Auburn offense, by the way, who didn't score a touchdown against LSU last year. Obviously, a lot of things have changed for both of these teams since that time a year ago, but I think the crowd plays a bigger factor in this game maybe than any game LSU plays all year.
All right, let me be serious for 2 seconds, then we'll have nothing but fun for the rest of the show. It's item number 10 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Some of you may be aware that Georgia linebacker Nate Patrick, currently serving what's believed to be a 4-game suspension because of a marijuana arrest last week. He did not play last week against Vanderbilt and probably won't play, as I said, in the next 3 Georgia games. The Georgia drug policy here on this, though, kind of out of line with many of the rest of the SEC that doesn't even provide suspensions for drug problems until much farther down the list. At Georgia, 1 infraction will get you 1-game suspension, 2 infractions get you the 4-game suspension. I had Seth Emerson, who covers the Georgia Bulldogs for DogNation.com, on my podcast, Dog Nation Daily, this morning. I asked him, does Georgia need to consider changing its drug policy? Here's what Seth had to say about that.
You know, Georgia's kind of backed itself into a corner, too, as an institution, as an athletic department, being so protective and defensive about this policy. If they even just kind of quietly change it, then they're going back on that. And it may be something they have to do. They may just have to take the PR hit and do it. Or they may just say, look, you know, we still feel this way, and, you know, we'll take it. You know, if it costs us some games by some good players, then oh well.
So it's important to point out here, suspending a player for 4 games for something that's barely even a crime in a lot of places around the country is way out of line with much of the rest of the SEC. But, as Seth alluded to, it would be a PR hit if Georgia goes back on this, even if going back on it puts it in line with the rest of the SEC. What should Georgia do about this?
Yeah, I have kind of a 2-part answer to this. First of all, if it was me personally, I would relax the policy. I think that when you look at the national landscape of what's going on with some of these laws and some of these policies around the country, then I think that you can individually look at that and say, how do I feel about this? But I think the second part of my answer is, Georgia's got to decide this for themselves. Each institution, for me, has to decide what they are as an institution. Georgia can be proud. I think a lot of Georgia fans are proud of the laws that they place against marijuana use at Georgia. Maybe they hold their kids to a higher standard. Maybe a lot of their fans love the fact that they do that. So for me, personally, I would relax them, but I think this is something a lot of Georgia fans and the administration there have to look in the mirror and find out what they are and what they want it to be.
And I think what's at issue here is the idea that if Georgia's suspending a player for 4 games for something that may not even earn a suspension, a lot of other SEC schools, is that a competitive disadvantage? I would suggest that it is, and I don't know that anyone is scandalized by marijuana use anymore. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a drug guy. That's not a part of my life. But in terms of, you know, suspending somebody 4 games because they've been a part of that, that just seems really out of balance with the rest of college football.
Yeah, I agree, especially when you kind of measure it up to what you see as the alcohol use going on around college campuses these days. I mean, there was a student that died from Roswell, Georgia, that was down at LSU last week, and there is a little bit of things that are out of balance when you look at this. But like I said, this is not for me to decide. I think this is Georgia and the people around Georgia that have to decide that for themselves.
Flip side of this conversation is Terrence Collins, who says, and he's a Georgia fan, well, if you're a player and you know you're going to get suspended, why do it? And that may be the question that is some people still struggle to answer about why this continues to be a problem, even with these policies being explicitly stated the way that they are. That's Mike Johnson. I'm Brandon Adams. This is AT&T's SEC Country Live. We told you we have more on those Florida alternate uniforms that'll be worn on Saturday against Texas A&M. We'll give you that coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, let me remind you that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. And it's now time for our AT&T look ahead as we look ahead to the big action in the SEC here this Saturday. And, of course, that Texas A&M Florida game, a part of that schedule, as well as Mississippi State here. And I think that Mississippi State desperately needs to get back to the win column against BYU. We showed you the point spread earlier. This is one of those games that the Bulldogs need to win big, I would say.
They definitely do. I think it's, what is it, sitting there at 22 points, is that what you said? And they have the ability to do that. BYU has shown me nothing this year that says they're a good football team. Mississippi State, this is a game they lost last year. They should be able to handle business and get back on track with this game against BYU.
I'm going to take Tennessee to win.
I think that's a tough one, man. I might go against you. I think I might take South Carolina. I just think that how many times have we called South Carolina and Jake Bentley? We've called him a gamer. I don't know that Tennessee has an answer to that at their quarterback position right now. With Garantano getting the snaps, I like Jake Bentley to kind of take over that game.
I may really regret that one. Of course, we've always we've weighed in already on Texas A&M, Florida, Auburn, LSU. This is actually a pretty good slate of SEC games. One quick final point. The two big heavy point spreads late. Arkansas, Alabama, Missouri, Georgia. Either of these games closer than the experts think.
I think I gotta pick Alabama and Arkansas for that one because if you're making me pick between the two, I think Georgia blows the door to Missouri. To me, Missouri has shown me nothing that says that they're going to be able to stop that ground game from Georgia right now.
All right, here on AT&T SEC Country Live, we're always looking to kind of close our show the same way, much like Tennessee coach Butch Jones is looking for champions of live. Well, we're looking for those here as well. And today it comes once again from the University of Florida. We've talked a lot this week about those alternate uniforms, those gator scale swamp thing. What is the official name of these things again?
I have no idea.
Well, Florida continues to promote this, and they're probably smart for doing that. The latest example of this is a Florida player walking on the field with a live gator. I think we have an image of this we can show you here. And here's my question on this, and I mean this in all sincerity. Are alligators dangerous or not? Because everybody's afraid of alligators. Occasionally you hear these terrible things about alligators, but you're not doing this with a tiger. Like LSU's not going to put a tiger on the field and walk with a player promoting an alternate uniform. Is the alligator dangerous here or not?
Absolutely dangerous. But I think that if you treat it the right way, and they probably fed him right before he walked out on the field, then maybe they can kind of take away some of that danger. I mean, we've heard a lot of bad things about alligators and crocodiles and caiman and all those things killing people. And so yeah, I'm going to vote that it probably is a dangerous animal.
What is this Florida player going to have to do that zigzag running thing to get away from the alligator? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you zigzag run, you can get away from the thing.
I'm telling you right now, I'd jump clear into the bleachers at the swamp right there and get out of it.
You've heard that, right?
I'm not wasting my time
can't run in a zigzag pattern.
I'm not wasting my time zigzagging. I'm telling you, I'm beeline.
Everybody that works on our show, how many of you have heard the alligators cannot run in a zigzag pattern?
She's lying. She's lying. She's lying. She saw everybody else's hand go up, and she was like, yeah,
all right, that wraps up the week for us on AT&T SEC Country Live. Enjoy the games this weekend. We're back Monday at 3 p.m. We'll talk more about them. Check out our podcast on iTunes. Give us a rating and review. That's a huge help to us. Also, share this show with your friends on Facebook. Let them know we're talking about the SEC each and every day here on AT&T's SEC Country Live. Y'all have a good weekend.